Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. My oh my, we've had so much going on. For starters, in case you missed it, we've got a new addition to the Pardon Pie family, Tara Dublin. Make sure you go follow her on Twitter at Tara Dublin Rocks. Also, pick up a copy of her book while you're at it. Make her day, The Sound of Settling. A very fun and interesting read compared to the things we talk about on this podcast. But yeah, we're heading toward the do or die time for the 2024 election. Go ahead and hit up JoeBiden.com. Get that man like $1 a month or something. Help his campaign staff up and get prepared to try and save our democracy. And make sure to grab like one other person you know and tell them about the podcast. Make sure they subscribe and tune in every single week. We got a lot of things coming up for you this year. We need all the support that we can get. So if you do your part and help us grow our audience, we'll do our part and help elect Joe Biden in 2024 and save American democracy. And this is the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. My oh my, has it been a week? I guess there are always weeks. Yes, every 7 days is a week, but the 7 days is so full of absolute utter batshit insanity that it's really difficult to keep track of exactly what it is that's going the fuck on. It's been so wild, I'm not even exactly sure where to start, but we'll figure it out. And before we get to that, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Sheets and Giggles. Make sure you pick up a set of wonderfully soft, luscious sheets from sheetsandgiggles.com for your friends and family for the holiday season. They deserve the best gift you can possibly give them, a good night's sleep. And you can help provide that with a set of sheets from sheetsandgiggles.com. Also, make sure you check out the show notes because we've got some links in there to get you a little discount on behalf of Pardon the Insurrection. By the way, make sure you go back and check out our previous episode with Josh Bender, the youngest black elected official in the country. We had a fantastic time. It was quite delightful. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And on to the endless fucking nonsense. Man, oh man. So, of course, last week, Rudy Giuliani was dealt what he referred to as the civil death penalty when a court in Georgia ordered him to pay up $148 million to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, Georgia election officials from the 2020 election, after he was found to have engaged in persistent defamation of their characters, causing them untold amounts of pain and suffering and harm, just practically ruining these people's lives in order to perpetuate the lie that the 2020 election was somehow stolen from Trump. It was rather funny listening to like mainstream media news outlets talk about this dude like they were reading his obituary. It was pretty funny. Like, it's all over for Rudy Giuliani. Like, they buried him. But, you know, in this case, figuratively, not literally. I don't know what to say. He had it fucking coming. It's about time for consequences to start bounding up for the people who attempted to steal the 2020 election, whether that be Trump, Rudy Giuliani, crackhead Mike Lindell, or any of these other individuals. You know, the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, they're in prison. Like, the consequences are finally starting to mount. We're finally starting to make some headway. If only we had the ability to not let the length of time that it took to get to this point, like, impact our perspective on the severity of these consequences. Like, we all feel like, oh man, nothing's ever happened to these people. But like, really, if you stop and think about it and you took all of the things that's happened to Trump and his cohorts over the past 2.5 years and you crammed it into, say, 3 months' time, you would feel a lot differently. Let's just say that. Like, so Trump got impeached. Of course, you know, the Senate didn't convict, but there was a fucking impeachment hearing. You remember it? It was absolutely wild. Absolutely fucking bananas. There was a January 6th committee. They held a number of hearings, presented a bunch of damning information about Trump and Republicans in Congress. Right? Remember that? Oh, they issued a report. Did you read it? No? Well, you know, we've got a significant portion of it on the podcast. You can go to pardontheinsurrection.com, change the season to season 2, I believe. You know, check out some of the January 6th report audio format. That way you don't have to sit and read that bitch for hours because it is quite long. The Proud Boys, they're in prison. Oath Keepers, they're in prison. Over 1,000 January 6 insurrectionists have pled guilty to crimes and are serving time or have served time. Mitch McConnell is shriveling up. His soul has damn near left his body. Kevin McCarthy, not only is he no longer Speaker of the House, motherfucker's just totally out of Congress. They got his ass about to paint all the way. Alex Jones, he lost $1 billion. Y'all remember that? Wasn't that long ago. Fox News also lost nearly $1 billion. My oh my, these consequences, man, they piling up. Trump was found liable for rape in New York. Media doesn't even talk about that anymore. The FBI raided Mar-a-Lago. Some crazy shit. Hell, Trump is currently on trial in New York as we speak for decades of fraud. The judge is wearing his ass out. As a matter of fact, I'll read to you a few of the comments from Judge Engoron just from today. Where's like the media coverage for this? Who knows? Quote, "A lie is still a lie. Valuing occupied residences as if vacant. Valuing restricted land as if unrestricted. Valuing an apartment as if it were triple its actual size. Valuing property many times the amount of concealed appraisals. Valuing planned buildings as if completed and ready to rent. Valuing golf courses with brand premium while claiming not to. And valuing restricted funds as cash are not subjective differences of opinion. They are misstatements at best and fraud at worst." Judge Engoron is wearing his ass out. He's about to lose his entire Trump organization. Like, how's that for consequences? Engoron's even calling out his expert witness. And I'll give you the quote from that. Trump's expert is, quote, "a tenured professor, but all that his testimony proves is that for $1 million or so, some experts will say whatever you want them to say." That's because, Trump, between Trump and his pack, they paid the witness to get up there and say that there was no discernible fraud. They paid this dude like $1 million. That's wild. And the judge is like, "I'm on to you guys." It's fucking crazy. Fake electors getting indicted everywhere, like multiple states at this point. Not to mention in Georgia, where Trump is also indicted, but also Rudy Giuliani, also Mark Meadows, who was trying to get this removed from state court and into federal court. That failed today, yet again. Jeffrey Clark indicted. John Eastman indicted. Sidney Powell indicted. She pled guilty. She cooperating. Kenneth Cheese, bro, he cooperating. He's like on a fake elector world tour, traveling around to every state, getting the fake electors locked up. I think Nevada was the most recent set of indictments. The fake electors from Wisconsin, like, making public confessions that the 2020 election was not rigged and they weren't the legitimate electors, and that they conspired to basically help Trump steal the fucking election. Like, even they're out here telling the public that Biden won. Jenna Ellis indicted. Hell, that's nearly all of Trump's lawyers. Martial law, Mike Lindell is broke. The way these Trumpers are losing all their money, they should have gone woke. Republicans were supposed to win the House in the midterms by 50, 60 seats. They currently have a 1-seat majority. Trump's finally headed toward a criminal trial in D.C. Of course, it seems as though there might be a slight hiccup with the Supreme Court. We'll get to that momentarily. As it currently stands, that trial is slated for March. That's 3 months from now. It's finally going on trial for the coup on January 6th and all of the plotting leading up to it. Now, again, assuming there are no shenanigans at the Supreme Court, that thing might get delayed a few weeks at most. Oh, did I mention like the Republican Party's going broke? Yeah, like the RNC in states all across the country, their fundraising is record lows. Ain't no dollars out there to help them in 2024. It's bad news. Bad news, guys. Well, I mean, good news if you're a Democrat. The oh yeah, George Santos, he indicted, he up out of there. Like, DOJ is clearly not afraid to go after members of Congress. I don't think that bodes well for them in the future. Again, we'll get to that momentarily. But look, what I'm saying is, if you took all of the consequences over the course of the past, 2.5, nearly 3 years now, and you crammed them into a period of time of, like, say, a few months or so, you'd be like, oh, it's over for the Republican Party. It's over for them. Look at all the consequences. You see what I'm saying? They are getting destroyed. But because the consequences have been spread out over a period of time and it's been a long, drawn-out process, it feels like nothing's happening, even though literally everything's happening. And not only is everything happening, but it's happening all at once. It's all coalescing to unload the most serious potential consequences in an election year, which is bad for the bad guys. So just keep that in mind. It is a process. It's playing itself out. Now, again, of course, we're going to have to vote for Joe Biden in 2024. Like, I'm not saying that it's not in our hands. Like, at the end of the day, regardless of what's to come, we do still have to take things into our own hands and save ourselves. But I'm okay with that. Like, it's understanding that it's on us is totally fine. We just got to get out here, do the work. Meanwhile, what are Republicans doing? Well, they're impeaching Hunter Biden. And they can't even tell you what for. All right, they're impeaching Joe Biden. But given that they can't even tell you what they're impeaching him for, and they've only made allusions to the idea that somehow President Biden profited off of his son's business ventures, which they have no proof of whatsoever. And like the time periods that they're quoting, he wasn't even in office. It's like 2018, 2019. All right, Trump was in office. Biden wasn't even running for office. He wasn't even a candidate. Yet Trump was running his fucking businesses out of the White House. Like, Trump is on trial right now. And the judge is like, hey, you was charging like a presidential premium when you were valuing your companies. But Joe Biden's the one out here profiting off of, get the fuck out of here. But yeah, so every Republican with their slim margin voted to open an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. Not a single one of them could tell the public what the specific crimes were that they were investigating, which seems insane. I feel like, if you're going to vote in unanimity to hold an impeachment inquiry, you could at least tell the public, I don't know what, high crimes and misdemeanors you're investigating. You ain't got no answers for that. And this is like the one thing that you can find. This is the one thing Republicans can support. An impeachment with no evidence into potential high crimes and misdemeanors that they can't define for us. And given that this is the only thing they've been able to vote on, like, apparently it was such a pressing matter. Biden's behavior, which they can't tell us what they're investigating, was so egregious that it united the entire party to vote to open an impeachment inquiry. And then they went on vacation. They passed the vote to open an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden, and then they clocked out for the winner, homie. That is insane. But clearly, look, obviously we all know what's going on here. Every time Republicans do something reasonable, like raise the debt ceiling or fund the government, they have to do something insane, like open an impeachment inquiry with no evidence, because Trump is demanding that they do so in order to, for a couple of reasons, I suppose. One, for a false equivalency, right? Trump was impeached twice, so now they have to impeach Biden. So impeachment means nothing. to the public. They can say, well, look, Biden got impeached too, so Trump's off the hook. But it's not just that, though. Like, given all the negative things that are happening to Trump and everyone in his inner circle, like, right-wing media needs counter-programming. They need something that they can focus all of their attention on, tunnel vision style, and totally tune out the actual news so they can pump it into the brains of their massive amounts of sheep-like supporters, creating a media bubble that's near an alternate reality to keep their supporters consumed and distracted and not focusing on the actual problems in real-life news surrounding Trump and his cohorts and the evidence of their guilt and the likelihood that in 2024 their electoral chances are doomed. You know, with the economy booming, inflation down, record job growth, record stock market performance. I mean, like, with all this good Biden news, Republicans need something to talk about. And that's really just what it is. Speaking of Hunter Biden, he was recently indicted here on a number of counts relating to not paying his taxes. And we don't have to go super far into detail about like the very specific nature of the charges. Suffice to say that a majority of the time, I don't know, maybe 90-something+% of the time, in cases like these, where someone is found to have not paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, eventually settles and pays up, that person's not indicted. It's just simple fact. Like, prosecutors, and you know, we're in like the legal Twitter circles will tell you, former prosecutors, they don't have any examples of anyone else in a similar situation who eventually paid off their debt in full being indicted. In fact, we've got a number of examples of individuals closely related to Trump who didn't pay their taxes and are facing significant debt, including having tax liens put on their houses or their business, and they weren't indicted. Case in point, Rudy Giuliani and Alina Habba. Yeah, that's right, Trump's former lawyer and his current lawyer. Both dealing with significant amounts of money in delinquent taxes and having a lien placed on their home in the case of Rudy Giuliani, and having a lien placed on her business in the case of Alina Habba, Trump's worst lawyer. All right, it's really difficult to tell if she's the worst because, I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast. He's run the gamut. A number of his other lawyers are criminally indicted, and some are even cooperating against him. So it just, yes. Now, I'm not saying it's a witch hunt, but what I am saying is a lot of former prosecutors will also tell you that they don't have any examples of a prosecutor offering the subject of their investigation a plea deal that includes only misdemeanors and turning around and indicting them with as many felonies as they can possibly come out with. They just don't have any examples. And I honestly, I don't care about Hunter Biden like who was due to me, right? He ain't my guy. I ain't vote for him in 2024. Like, oh well, right? But clearly, this is intended to, I can only assume that Weiss, the special counsel investigating Hunter Biden, who offered him that plea deal, and when it fell apart, hit him with all these charges, like, that was because of pressure from the right. Now, on the one hand, I do believe Hunter Biden's probably got a fairly reasonable argument for selective prosecution based on the grounds that they ain't got no other examples of this shit ever happening ever. And then they have many counter examples of individuals in the same position not facing any criminal charges whatsoever. You know, also Hunter Biden's like subpoenaing motherfuckers. He's trying to get communications between Weiss and people at DOJ, and communications between, people at DOJ and Trump, and just like, he's really going after it. And he'll be able to raise that argument in a pretrial motion. But should that fail, like if this does go to court and he's not able to introduce that evidence at trial, I mean, look, it's not going to go well for him. So, I mean, we'll have to deal with that when we do. But I think a large majority of the population who are not super online are making their decision about whether or not to vote for Joe Biden based on Joe Biden, not Hunter Biden. But again, like I said, this ain't about that. This is, an attempt by Republicans to muddy the waters and to create counter-programming so they can avoid talking about actual facts. Because, as I was saying earlier, odds are we are dealing with a Trump trial in D.C. over his attempt to overturn the 2020 election in about 3 months, March, maybe April at the latest, unless there's some shenanigans from the Supreme Court. Now, Trump's filed a pretrial motion in D.C. asserting that he has total and absolute immunity for any actions taken while he was in office as president of the United States. Now, we all know that's some total bullshit. Judge Chucky knew it was some total bullshit. Like, she ripped him to shreds. The thing is, though, because this is an assertion of immunity, it is subject to interlocutory appeal, which is pretrial appeal. And of course, because it's an argument that has never really been tested in court, it is likely going to make its way to the Supreme Court in all likelihood, even if it has to go through the appeals process first. So Jack Smith decided to circumvent the whole appeals process, or at least attempt to, by requesting an expedited hearing by the Supreme Court justices so they could take this up early in January, get an answer, get it out of the way, and keep this trial schedule pretty much intact. Now, again, we don't have to delve super deeply into like the intricate details of the legal process and the legal argument here. That's not what we're going to do in this particular instance. Instead, one thing that it appears as though no one else is talking about: what if everything goes wrong? What if the Supreme Court, in taking this up, decides to slow roll it? Because at this point, due to the appeal, all of the pretrial obligations have been temporarily stayed. Like, that stuff is on pause until this appeal is settled. Like, what if the Supreme Court decides to slow roll this as much as possible, Judge Cannon style, and help Trump delay this criminal trial as long as possible? Or even worse, what if the conservatives on the Supreme Court decide they would like to bail Trump out? Now, maybe they don't go full on, presidential immunity here, which, again, would be an insane argument. It would be like, President of the United States could just kill Congress. And that way, even though it'd be a high crime and misdemeanor to kill Congress, there'd be no one to impeach him. So it'd be impossible to charge him with criminal charges, or he could just stay in office forever. Like, it'd be an insane argument. What if they tailor their decision narrowly just to specifically benefit Trump in this one particular instance that might bail him out of trial? What does Jack Smith do? You haven't thought about that, have you? Well, that's okay. I am here to tell you that in all likelihood, given what I know, just given what's publicly available about the evidence collected by Jack Smith and company, I think Jack Smith has made some concessions in what he is willing to charge, and narrowly tailored his indictment strategy around getting Trump in court as soon as possible, to the exclusion of a number of Trump's co-conspirators. Hear me out here. Smith knows the election is in 2024, and he's got to get this trial out of the way before the election. Otherwise, in all likelihood, Trump could either pardon himself or, temporarily let his vice president hold the office of president and issue a pardon to Trump, or even more simply, just appoint an attorney general who's willing to drop the charges against Trump. Because again, even if he's convicted, as long as it's on appeal, a corrupt attorney general at DOJ would have the opportunity to drop the charges and therefore nullify the conviction. I know it sucks. But again, this is Jack Smith's plan A. And if somehow the Supreme Court throws a monkey wrench in his plans and delays his trial until after the election, or even worse, bails Trump out, what is Jack Smith's plan B? Well, I personally believe plan B is indict every fucking body. All of Trump's co-conspirators. Everyone who appears to have skated temporarily. All of Trump's co-conspirators in Congress. Everyone who was involved in the fake elector plot. Anyone who was involved in helping to plan January 6th. I think Jack Smith was attempting to make sure he didn't do anything that could potentially delay Trump's March trial in D.C. by indicting other co-conspirators and subjecting that trial to, even more pretrial motions, like especially if it's members of Congress. Then they'd file all kinds of fucking motions claiming immunity based on the speech and debate clause, which would inevitably get appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court, which would inevitably cause more and more delay. Like, he didn't want to muck this up. That's why the indictment is so clean and there's no co-conspirators. And once this trial is over, I assume he was planning on working his way back down the pyramid and cleaning up afterwards and getting everyone that he didn't get in this first set of indictments. But if somehow SCOTUS manages to throw a wrench in Jack Smith's plan, plan B is to go after every other Republican and every other crackhead, Mike Lindell, in Trump's circle who was involved in attempting to illegally overturn the election. So I don't think Republicans know this, but they better be secretly hoping and rooting for the Supreme Court to do the right thing and throw Trump under the bus. Because if not, the Supreme Court will be throwing Republicans under the bus. And just remember, Democrats have a majority in the Senate, and Republicans, they only have a 1-seat majority in the House. And I don't think it would take too many indictments to get that majority back for Democrats. And that concludes this episode of Pardon the Insurrection.